Hi everyone, it's Rax bringing you another Diablo 4 Endgame build guide that I think is going to be amazing. Let's talk about the Ice Shards Sorcerer. I leveled up his Ice Shards and I really tried all the skills for pretty much all the classes, and Ice Shard Sorcerer to me was definitely the best option for Sorcerer if you wanted to be like Frost or Cold Spec. What I secretly wanted it to be was Frozen Ore, but Ice Shards turned you into a machine gun. You just stand there and machine gun Ice Shards, and you can make them automatically proc from Frost Nova, and they ricochet and they pierce, and it's just incredible. The crowd control that you're going to have, the ability to manipulate the battle here in this build is going to be insane, and your single target damage is going to be incredible. You're going to have infinite vulnerable applied, and you're eventually going to apply vulnerable, frozen, stunned, and immobilized always. So this is a pretty sick build. And I got to give credit to North War here, who wrote the guide. He's been a godly writer for Maxroll for many years. I'll link his Switch down below. You guys should go follow him. Okay, so first of all, for the legendary powers, there's actually not too many that you need to start off with. The important one is obviously the Ice Shards one. You can actually get this in the very first act in Dead Man's Dredge, and it's good enough to start. Another good one is Prodigies. You're going to notice that when you start playing this build, you're going to have big mana problems, but we're going to have a progression here which is going to help us solve that. Another really good one is Elementalists. Core Mastery, cast at 100 mana, at or above, get 60% increased critical strike chance. So that's going to give us massive critical strike chance, so we're going to be able to pump critical strike damage, which if you watch my previous video on damage, you would know that critical strike damage is one of the most important things for all classes to scale. Okay, in the endgame. So let's talk about the individual skills and we'll see the progression here. So Ice Shards. Launch 5 Ice Shards and it deals more damage to frozen enemies. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of the frozen. We'll definitely have that. Ice Shards have 40% chance to ricochet to another enemy. Ice Shards always ricochet if they're frozen. Okay, so now you're seeing the ricochets coming in. And hitting an enemy with 5 Ice Shards in a single cast makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. Permanent vulnerable, especially on single target. So it's a godly effect. Meteor is for the end game. Let me talk about this later. Frost Nova. This is extremely important. Not only does it apply the freeze that we need from all the stuff that we read before, but it also auto applies vulnerable. We're going to pump this as hard as we can to bring the cooldown as low as possible. And Frost Nova is critical for the enchantment slot that we're going to talk about in a second. Teleport, I don't need to tell you why teleport is important. You want to move around. Ice Armor and Flame Shield are just going to keep you alive. Now, the Ice Shard enchantment. Ice Shards automatically conjure and fly toward frozen enemies. So that means that actually Frost Nova is like an offensive skill. Boom, you freeze, the Ice Shards fly, boom, gone. Godly. And then you have the Firebolt enchantment, which is going to apply the burning for all the little tricky stuff. I think I talked about this in my Chain Lightning leveling build. Once you have everything burning, then you have access to things like Devouring Blaze when you have a godly critical strike chance. So let's go down here and let's look at the progression of how this works. So when you would start with the build, we kind of went over the skills and the passives. I think you can figure those out. They're pretty self-explanatory. These Glass Cannon are for additional damage, and these are for kind of staying alive. So nothing too crazy here. And then, of course, we're taking all the Frost passives down here. But the thing you're going to understand about this build when you first start is you just don't have enough mana. You just can't even play. So that's not fun. So the way that you solve that is on the final passive, you take Avalanche, which gives you a chance to have your Ice Shards consume no mana. And that's fine, but when we do that, we lose a lot of AoE damage that we normally would have from the Shatter final passive. We want to use Shatter, not Avalanche. So for the time being, what you can do is you can pump Fireball and take the Fireball enchantment, which is going to give you the explosion. And once you solve your mana problems, we do a little respec. So Fireball is out, and then we take Shatter. And now all of a sudden we're getting the AoE from Shatter. After the freeze expires, they're going to deal 25% of the damage that you dealt to them while they're going to explode and do the damage that you dealt while frozen. So there's our explosion. And then now we can take the Firebolt enchantment and take Devouring Blaze. Devouring Blaze, we get critical strike damage, and it's going to be doubled or more than doubled, to 75 if they're immobilized. So now we say, okay, well, we need an immobilize, right? And by the way that we're gathering everything right now is with Inferno. But the way that we immobilize everything is in the end game. We're going to get this beautiful legendary Raiment of the Infinite. This is what you're looking for. When you finally find this, teleport. When you teleport, close enemies are pulled to you and they're stunned. Okay, so wait a minute. It pulled all the monsters and it stunned them. And then you will freeze them with Frost Nova. And also now that you don't need the pull from the snake, now you take Meteor, which also immobilizes them. So they're stunned from the teleport, from the legendary. They're frozen because of Frost Nova, which also triggered your Ice Shards enchantment slot. And it applied vulnerable, if I didn't say that already. And then the Meteor hits, which immobilizes them. And then it gives you that massive damage increase that we saw from Devouring Blaze. 75% critical strike damage. And all of a sudden that pull, everything in there, once you Ice Shard, is going to die instantly. So the synergy there at the end is incredible. And by the way, we've got a gameplay video at the end watching North War mess around with it. Okay, so we've explained that. We can start to talk about the damage here. Cooldown reduction is pretty self-explanatory. To bring back your Frost Nova, it does so much for you in this build. Mana is an issue early on. You have to solve that. And then every offensive stat is like the same in every single build. Did you watch my last video about damage? If you haven't, you should check that out. It pretty much applies to every class. Always the best stats: critical strike damage, critical strike chance, vulnerable damage, your main stat, and attack speed, because they're separate out of that gigantic additive bucket. So when you look here and you see, you're always going to see crit, vulnerable, main stat, attack speed, over and over and over. This is what you're going to find all the time. Okay, so I think most of this is probably pretty self-explanatory. We're about to look at some gameplay here. The glyphs, so destruction is going to give you more course. For every 5 decks, you're going to get increased critical strike damage. Okay, that's the godly stat that you're looking for in that different bucket. And then critical strikes increase all damage that the enemies take. Remember that we have that aspect on our amulet, which is going to give us a massive increased critical strike chance. Then we have that Devouring Blaze, which is going to be godly, and everything's going to be amazing. So we have exploit. Exploit always does something it seems to always for every class do something with vulnerable. And vulnerable is godly because it's a separate multiplier, so we take exploit everywhere. So Imbiber is pretty popular on many, many builds. Remember, sorcerers rely on barrier to stay alive, so you should pretty much always be healthy. You're either healthy or you're dead on a sorcerer. So this is has a lot of value. And then Flame Feeder, you deal increased damage to burning enemies. Remember, your Firebolt enchantment makes everything burning all the time. And then we have Tactician. You get a bonus to all rare nodes. So then you just put it in the Frigid Fate board, which has all the vulnerable nodes for a sorcerer, and then you magnify them. Again, vulnerable is huge, and you have permanent vulnerable in this build, not only from the Frost Nova, but from the Ice Shards enchantment. And then finally, Enchanter kind of rounds it out. Again, as Northworth said, not that impressive, but that by then you'll be level 100 and pumping everything. You want to see some gameplay? We actually have some gameplay here. Let's look at it. And by the way, Northward does not have like a full setup here. He's level 73. But hopefully the quality here should improve here in a second. There we go. So he's still using the snake, so he doesn't have the unique to pull everything in. But notice how you have a machine gun. Your attack is literally a machine gun. Okay, got a big old pack of elites. Boom. Gone. And you notice they were barely hitting him because they're always crowd controlled. You can see the Frost Nova doing major damage even though he probably doesn't have the build fully online. You can see him throwing the Ice Shards everywhere from the freeze. Boom. Gone. God, this build looks fun. I'm gonna have to make this. This looks way too fun. Sorcerer's got some good builds, man. Sorcerer, one of the most well-rounded. You can actually put lightning or frost. Or fire even. I mean, I don't know, man. Sorcerer, they seem to have done pretty well with it. A lot of the other classes seem to have like one build that seems way better. There's the pull. Snake wasn't as good as I hoped it would be for grouping, but luckily we're going to get rid of the snake.
I'm not ready
Sacred dagger, and a ancestral unique staff. Too bad it wasn't the chest piece. Too bad it wasn't a Shaco. Oh, another legendary. North War's pumping here. I think for leveling that the Ice Shard build was not only the best, but I also thought it was the most fun. And I think in the endgame build, I think this is going to destroy it. Another thing that's very, very nice about this, you know, you can choose to engage when you want to, and you have all those stuns. But if you're fighting a boss and you can't survive in the high nightmare dungeons, you can just stand back and machine gun them. But I want to watch the end of this because I want to see how good it does on the boss. But I love the synergies here, and one of the things that I really love about this build is the actual progression. Like, you're solving one piece at a time. You solve your mana, and then allows you to take, you know, swap your keystone passive, and then swap out of your enchantment slot to take firebolt to pick up all the fire passives, and then you're just looking for one unique chest to give you the stun to get rid of the snakes, so you can immobilize them with meteor. Okay, watch boss fight. Here we go. Oh, dead instantly. One of the builds that actually has god tier single target. So this build looks like it's going to be incredibly fun, and I'm really, really leaning toward making it for the first sorcerer that I make. Hope you found this build guide helpful. I'll put the link down to North War stream and the guide if you'd like to read it, and try this if you're going to be sorcerer. It's going to be godly. Thank you.